China has announced that its defense spending will increase by 7.2%. This would be its fastest rise in military spending in 4 years. The announcement comes as Beijing warned of quote unquote escalating threats from abroad at its annual National People's Congress, a rubber stamp parliament, which is an important window into Beijing's policies. The country's planned budget for this year puts defense spending at $225 billion, which is slightly higher than last year's 7.1 increase rate. While announcing this new budget, outgoing Premier Li Keqiang said that the military must intensify training and strengthen work in all directions and domains. The spending increase outpaced targeted economic growth of around 5%, one of its lowest in decades. The increase in defense budget comes amid concerns on Beijing's strategic intentions and rising tensions in recent years over Taiwan. The premier also spoke on Taiwan during the annual meeting, where he said Chinese government should advance the process of China's peaceful reunification, but added that Beijing should be taking resolute steps to oppose Taiwanese independence. The premier also spoke highly of armed forces achievements at the borders without directly mentioning unresolved eastern Ladakh standoff with India. Take a listen.
We should fully implement Chinese president's thinking on strengthening the military strategy for the new era. Our armed forces, with a focus on the goals for the centenary of the People's Liberation Army in 2027, should accomplish the tasks entrusted to them by the party and the people. We should improve all-around military governance and build on and expand the gains of national defense and military reform. We should strengthen the national defense scientific and technological capabilities.
China has been ramping up its defense expenditure as it seeks to challenge U.S. for global influence. China has long argued that it needs to close the gap with the United States. However, compared to the U.S., China's military spending is a quarter of proposed U.S. spending this year alone, which is around $858 billion. The war in Ukraine has also prompted some elements in China's military-industrial complex to call for an increase in the defense budget. Well, for more on this, Edward P. Joseph, Senior Fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and Foreign Policy Analyst, is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Welcome back to WION, and thank you so much for joining us. So, this increase in defense spending, how big of a concern is this, at least for the folks who are watching in Europe and Washington?
Well, the actual amount, the absolute amount, and as a percentage of China's military spending is not that great. What is significant is that China saw fit to make an increase at all over a very hefty defense spending of last year, and at a time when China is facing economic adversity and less growth than it had anticipated. So what's significant here is that China sees the need to have even this single decimal point increase as a signal, a symbolic signal that of its insistence on maintaining its posture, its rather aggressive posture in Asia and in the world. And that's I think the most significant takeaway here. It's not the absolute number. It's the determination of China to show that that we are going to increase our defense spending and we are going to maintain our aggressive posture in the world. Please.
And do you think China is also looking into 2024 and the elections here in the United States, possibly if a Republican takes over the White House, considering the fact that a Republican president will definitely have a more confrontational stance against China? Do you think that China is taking that into consideration as well? Although, as we mentioned, the numbers are very far off from each other when it comes to military budget and spending, the United States and China.
Yes, obviously, Susan, as you state correctly, the U.S. Defense budget is far larger than China's, but China's is number 2 in the world. And with respect to the United States, there's no doubt that you're correct that China has its eye on the United States. That's the competitor that China wants to replace. That's why China violates its own position on sovereignty and territorial integrity of states by backing Russia in its invasion of Ukraine. That's the reason. It does all this because it's focused, that China is focused on replacing the United States. And that's why China threatens its neighbors in Asia, including India, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea. And that's why those countries look to the United States. And with respect to elections and domestic politics in the U.S., yes, China looks to the U.S., but actually China does not see much difference between the approach of Democrats or Republicans. President Biden and the Democratic Party as a whole have been equally tough on China, as have the Republican Party. So there's little difference in terms of the appreciation in Washington of the threat that China poses between the two parties. And at the same time, yes, I believe that Xi Jinping wanted to send a signal. That's why he did this. It's only a 0.1% increase in defense spending, but he wanted to absolutely send a signal that of an increase of any sort as a signal that China sees itself, it will maintain its posture, and it will not be deterred in what it sees as its own threats to its sphere of influence in Asia. Please.